belong here. You will never leave.
The kind of place where everyone knows your name, but you're just another face in the crowd if you've never lived here. I'd heard about it from a friend, though I don't know why. I didn't have much of a reason to come, but a fresh start seemed like a good idea after everything that had happened. The job I had secured in the town seemed like a perfect distraction from the mess I'd left behind. Millford had a strange kind of charm. The streets, lined with crooked old houses, each with their own secrets, felt almost like something out of an old film. The leaves had started falling, making the sidewalks slippery, and the air had the kind of bite that only late October can bring. I didn't mind, though. It was better than the suffocating humidity I'd left behind in the city. I checked in to the only inn in town, a small, creaky building that had probably been there for a century. The old woman at the front desk didn't say much as she handed me the key, only a curt nod that felt more like a warning. I had no idea why I felt the way I did when I walked into that room. It was just a room, small, nothing special, but there was something about it, something I couldn't put my finger on. The air felt stale, as if it had been trapped here for years, and the shadows in the corners seemed just a little too dark. I unpacked my things quickly, trying to push aside the unease that crawled up my spine. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, and each tick seemed to grow louder, more menacing. Outside, I could hear the wind howling, but it wasn't the usual kind of wind. It sounded wrong, like it was whispering secrets, dark ones, secrets that the town didn't want anyone to know. That evening, I ventured out for a walk to shake off the strange feeling that clung to me. The town seemed to sleep early. Everyone was either inside or keeping to themselves. The few people I passed were quiet, their eyes avoiding mine, as though they were holding something back, like they knew something I didn't. I kept walking, hoping to clear my head, but the air only grew heavier and the shadows deeper. As I walked down the street, I saw the old church. The stone structure stood in the distance, half hidden by the thick trees that seemed to have grown around it, as though the town itself wanted to keep it a secret. I couldn't resist. Something pulled me toward it. I approached the gate, the rusted iron groaning as I pushed it open. It felt like I was crossing some sort of threshold, stepping into a forgotten time. The church was silent, its stained glass windows dimly glowing under the dim streetlights. The door creaked open as I pushed it, and I stepped inside. The smell of old wood and incense hit me instantly, like a wave. The air was thick with dust, but it didn't seem right. It wasn't just dust. It felt like the air had been trapped here for ages. I walked through the pews, the floorboards creaking beneath my boots. In the far corner of the church stood a large, ornate altar, surrounded by candles that flickered in the dim light. But it was the statue that caught my attention. A tall figure, cloaked in shadow, stood before the altar. The eyes of the statue were unnervingly lifelike, piercing through the darkness as if it was watching me. I couldn't help but feel like it was waiting for something. Waiting for me, perhaps. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I took a step back, but something stopped me. I couldn't leave. It was like the air had thickened around me, pulling me back toward the statue. My hand reached out involuntarily, brushing the cold stone. A chill ran through me, and suddenly the church felt much too large, much too empty. And that's when I heard it. A soft whisper, like a breath against my ear. It was so quiet that at first I thought I had imagined it, but then it came again, louder this time. The words were intelligible, but there was a sense of urgency to them. I turned, half expecting someone to be there, but no one was. Only the empty pews, the flickering candles, and that unnerving statue. My heart started to race. I turned and bolted out of the church, the door slamming behind me with a resounding thud that echoed through the town. I stood outside, trying to catch my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. But when I looked back at the church, it was different. The windows, which had been dimly lit before, were now completely black. The statue that had stood in the corner was gone. I stood frozen, unsure of what I had just experienced. It felt like something had crossed between us, something dark, something that had been waiting for me to arrive. I didn't know if I was just imagining things, but deep down, I knew something was wrong with this place, and I hadn't even begun to understand just how wrong.
The next morning, I tried to shake off the feeling that had clung to me from the night before. The air had felt heavy, thick with something I couldn't quite explain. I told myself it was just a figment of my imagination, maybe the stress of moving to a new town, or the weirdness of a small, unfamiliar place. After all, I had to get to work and start making a living again, but as the sun rose, the town seemed to carry a weight that hadn't been there before. I grabbed breakfast at the local diner, the only place in town that served food at this hour. As I walked in, the bell above the door rang, and the warmth of the place was a stark contrast to the chill I felt just outside. The diner was small, with a handful of tables, most of which were occupied by older locals who didn't seem to notice my presence. It was as if I were invisible to them, or perhaps they just didn't care to acknowledge the stranger in their midst. The waitress, a woman in her late 40s with a tired smile, gave me a quick once-over before sliding a menu in front of me. "You new around here?" she asked, her voice friendly, but laced with a kind of weariness that made me feel like she was asking more than just about my physical presence. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just moved in." Her eyes narrowed for a second, as though assessing me, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sat there, watching the people around me. They ate in silence, never talking to each other, their eyes vacant, lost in thought or something else entirely. The oddness of it struck me. It was like they were all part of some unspoken agreement. No one was allowed to make eye contact or have a conversation. They just existed. The only sound was the clinking of silverware against plates and the occasional hiss of the coffee machine. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It wasn't just the church. It wasn't just the atmosphere that hung in the air. It was the people. They were different, but not in an obvious way. It was the subtle things, the way they moved, the way they looked at you, as if you weren't really part of their world. It felt like they were hiding something they didn't want anyone else to know. As I ate, I couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversation from the tables around me. "She's gone," an older man murmured to his companion, his voice barely above a whisper. The other man nodded solemnly. "Yeah, it's happening again." I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. Gone like the others? What were they talking about? I tried to keep my face neutral, but I couldn't help but feel a shiver crawl up my spine. Before I could gather the courage to ask, the waitress returned with my coffee, setting it down in front of me without saying a word. She walked away quickly, her movements sharp, as though she had somewhere else to be, though there was nowhere else to go in a town this small. I finished my meal and left the diner, but the unease lingered. The streets were quieter now, as though the whole town had settled into a strange, sleepy rhythm. People moved about, but it was almost as if they weren't truly living, just going through the motions. I decided to visit the local library, hoping that some reading would distract me. As I walked in, the musty smell of old paper hit me immediately. The library was a small, dimly lit room with rows upon rows of dusty books. The librarian, an older woman with glasses perched on the tip of her nose, barely glanced up from the book she was reading when I walked in. I wandered through the aisles, but something about the place felt off. It was the silence. There were no sounds of people flipping through books, no hushed whispers of people sharing their thoughts. It was as if no one had visited this library in years. I pulled a book off the shelf, a dusty old novel that looked like it hadn't been touched in ages. But as I flipped through the pages, I noticed something strange. There were marks, underlined sentences, and notes scribbled in the margins, but they weren't from any reader. They were different, almost frantic, and they all seemed to reference one thing: the darkness is watching. I froze. My hand shook as I turned the page, and that's when I saw it. At the bottom of the page, written in thick, hurried scrawl, "It never leaves. You never leave. It's always here." My breath caught in my throat. I slammed the book shut and returned it to the shelf, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed to get out of here, out of this place. But as I turned to leave, the librarian finally looked up, her pale eyes locking onto mine. "You've been here long enough," she said, her voice cold, almost rehearsed. "You'd better leave." Her words hit me like a slap to the face. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I couldn't stay, not anymore. I walked out of the library, the door slamming shut behind me with an echo that seemed to linger in the air. The town felt different now, heavier, suffocating. The shadows seemed deeper, and the silence was louder. And I realized then that Millford wasn't just a sleepy town. It was something else, something darker, and I had just become part of it.
The day passed by in a blur. I tried to go about my usual business, but every corner of Millford seemed to have something lurking beneath the surface. The more I walked around, the more I felt eyes on me, unseen, watching. I couldn't shake the feeling that the town knew something I didn't, something that had been here long before I ever arrived. I decided to stop by the local grocery store. I needed a few things, and maybe talking to someone, even a stranger, would help ease the discomfort that was slowly taking over me. The store was small, with narrow aisles and an old-fashioned charm. There was a bell that rang when you entered, but it sounded off-key, like it had been ringing for too long without being replaced. Behind the counter stood an elderly man, hunched over slightly, his face lined with age, but also something else, something colder. He didn't greet me as I entered, just watched silently as I walked down the aisles. The shelves were poorly stocked, and the goods on them seemed outdated. Everything was old, worn out. It was as if the store, much like the town, had stopped moving forward in time. I picked up a few things, feeling more and more uneasy with each step I took. As I approached the counter to pay, the old man looked at me for the first time, his eyes sharp despite his age. "You're not from around here," he said, his voice low but clear. I nodded, trying to sound casual. "Just moved in, got a job here." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached under the counter and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. He opened it and began flipping through the pages slowly, as if searching for something. His fingers trembled slightly, and I noticed that the pages seemed worn, yellowed with age. Finally, he stopped at a page near the back and stared at it for a long moment. "You should leave," he muttered suddenly, his voice low, barely above a whisper. I blinked, taken aback. "What?"
The old man's eyes met mine again, and this time there was a strange gleam in them. This town, it's not what you think. They're all part of it. You've already started to see it, haven't you? The way they look at you, the whispers, the things you hear at night. You should leave before it's too late. I opened my mouth to ask what he meant, but he slammed the notebook shut, his face hardening. It's too late for me, but you can still leave. His words sent a chill down my spine. I didn't know what to say. I paid for my items quickly, but as I walked out of the store, I couldn't help but feel like his warning was more than just the ramblings of an old man. It felt like a threat, one I didn't fully understand, but one that I could feel creeping up behind me, closing in. That night, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. I couldn't stay inside. I needed to be out, moving. Maybe a walk would help me figure out what was going on with this town. I walked down the main street again, the streetlights casting long shadows on the ground. The town was eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes when everyone's hiding something. The air felt colder than before, and a light fog had begun to roll in, making it harder to see more than a few feet ahead. I turned a corner and found myself on a narrow street I hadn't noticed before. The houses here were old, much older than the rest of the town. They were dilapidated, with broken windows and peeling paint. They had that abandoned look, like no one had lived in them for years. Yet somehow, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching from behind those empty windows. I walked further down the street, drawn to something that I couldn't explain. It was almost like a magnetic pull, something in the air that made my feet move without thinking. And then I saw it. At the end of the street, hidden by the fog, stood a house, one that seemed different from the others. It was large, dark, and foreboding. The windows were all boarded up, but there was something about it that didn't sit right. It wasn't just abandoned. It felt alive. I walked closer, my heart pounding in my chest, and as I got near, I saw something move in one of the upstairs windows, a shadow. It moved quickly, almost as if it had been watching me. My breath caught in my throat, and I stopped, staring at the house, wondering if I had seen what I thought I saw. And then I heard it. A sound, soft at first, but growing louder. It was a whisper, just on the edge of hearing, like someone was calling my name. I spun around, but there was no one there. The street was empty, as silent as it had been before. I took a deep breath and turned back to the house, but now it seemed closer, as though it had somehow moved toward me in the time it took me to look away. The shadow in the window was now clearer, more defined. I could almost make out the figure, a person staring directly at me. I didn't think, I just ran. I sprinted back down the street, my legs burning, my heart racing. I could feel the cold air on my skin, the weight of something chasing me, though I didn't dare look back. The house, the figure, had to be in my head. It had to be. But the sound of my footsteps seemed too loud in the quiet town. The air seemed too thick. And just as I reached the main road, I heard a voice, sharp and clear, cutting through the fog. "You're already here. You can't leave now." I stopped dead in my tracks, panic flooding my chest. The voice wasn't just in my head, it was real. And then I heard the whispers, soft
but growing louder, swirling around me. In the fog, they came from every direction. I turned, trying to find the source, but there was nothing but the fog, the empty streets, and the feeling that Millford was closing in on me.
Segment 4. Uncovering the truth. The whispers continued to haunt me as I stood frozen in the middle of the street, my pulse pounding in my ears. They weren't just whispers anymore. They were voices, low, guttural, like 1,000 secrets being shared all at once. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. It was a warning, but also a beckoning, as though the town itself was calling me, pulling me into its depths. I took a shaky breath, forcing myself to move. The fog wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket, the streetlights barely visible through the thick mist. The whispers seemed to follow me, just out of reach, always just around the corner. I turned back toward the town center, hoping the noise would fade, but the chill in the air only deepened, and the weight on my chest grew heavier. As I walked, I found myself back at the diner, the one place that had felt vaguely normal in this twisted town. But now, as I stood outside, I noticed something strange. The lights were on, but there was no sign of the usual early morning rush. It was as though the town had come to a standstill. I pushed the door open, the bell ringing sharply as I entered. The waitress, the same one from earlier, was standing at the counter, staring at the wall, her hands clasped in front of her. She didn't acknowledge me as I walked in, her eyes locked on some distant point beyond the window. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice shaking despite myself. Her head slowly turned toward me, and for the first time, I saw the fear in her eyes. Real fear, not the kind that comes with a bad day or a difficult customer. This was something deeper, something older. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You don't understand. No one leaves Millford. You've seen too much." "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart racing. "What's going on here? Why is everyone acting so strange?" Her eyes flickered toward the door, as though she feared someone would overhear. She leaned in closer, her voice barely more than a breath. "This town, it's not just a town, it's a trap. It pulls people in, people like you, people who don't belong. Once you see it, once you start hearing the whispers, there's no going back." I felt a chill run through me. "What are you talking about? Why can't I leave?" She sighed, her face sagging with the weight of years of fear. "There's something in the ground here, something old. The town was built over it. People tried to leave, tried to escape, but they never make it. You can't run from it. The darkness won't let you." I stepped back, my mind racing. "What darkness? What are you saying?" "The thing you're hearing," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not just a sound. It's the town calling. The thing buried under the earth. It's alive. It needs people to keep it awake, to feed it. And you're part of it now." I opened my mouth to protest, but the words caught in my throat. A sharp, sudden noise came behind me, and I spun around, heart hammering in my chest. A figure stood in the doorway. It was a man, tall and thin, his face shadowed by the brim of a worn hat. His presence felt wrong, like he didn't belong in this place, like he didn't belong in this world. The waitress's face went pale. "It's too late," she whispered, backing away. "You've seen him. He's come for you." The man stepped forward, his boots clicking sharply against the floor. He didn't speak, but his eyes, dark, hollow, locked on mine. There was something unnatural about the way he moved, his movements smooth, almost fluid, as if he were gliding rather than walking. "Leave him alone," the waitress said, her voice shaking. But the man, no, the thing didn't hear her. His gaze never wavered, and he took another step closer, his face inches from mine. He opened his mouth, and for a brief, horrifying moment, I thought he was going to speak, but instead, the words that came out of his mouth weren't his own. They were other. The voice was ancient, guttural, like something from the depths of the earth. "You cannot escape. You are part of the town now. You are one of us." I backed away, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The waitress was crying now, her eyes wide with terror. But the man, no, the thing, didn't care. It just kept walking toward me, its gaze unblinking, unwavering. Then just as suddenly as if it appeared, the figure stopped. It tilted its head, as though listening to something only it could hear. For a split second, the air seemed to grow still, almost as if time itself had frozen. And then, just as quickly, the figure turned and walked out of the diner, disappearing into the fog outside. I stood there, heart racing, my entire body frozen in place. I had no idea what had just happened, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever that thing was, it was only the beginning. The waitress, still shaking, wiped her eyes and looked at me. "You've seen it now. You've seen the thing in the town, the thing that controls everything. You can't leave. No one ever leaves Millford." I turned to leave, but she grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so frail. "You need to understand," she said, her voice a rasp. "You weren't the first. There were others before you, and there will be others after you, but you will never leave. None of us ever do." I jerked my arm away from her grip, my mind spinning. I ran out of the diner, barely noticing the cold fog enveloping me again. I didn't know where to go, what to do, but as I ran down the street, I could feel the whispers growing louder. They weren't just in the air now, they were in my head, in my bones, in my heart. Millford wasn't a town, it was a prison, and I had just been trapped inside.
Segment 5. The Ritual. I ran through the fog, the weight of the town pressing down on me like a physical force. My legs felt like lead, and each breath I took was colder than the last. The whispers in my mind were louder now, overwhelming, repeating the same words over and over. "You can't leave. You can't escape. You're one of us." I couldn't think straight. My only instinct was to get away, to run, far, far from Millford. But the fog was closing in, and the streets seemed to stretch endlessly, as if they were leading me nowhere. I could see the faint outline of the houses around me, their windows dark and empty, their doors tightly shut. The town felt alive with something ancient, something watching. I was being herded into a trap, and I could feel it tightening around me. I turned a corner and found myself at the edge of town, staring at the dense forest that bordered Millford. It was dark, the trees towering like black sentinels, their branches reaching out like twisted hands. For a brief moment, I thought I could make it. I could leave, run into the woods and never look back. But I knew that wasn't an option. The whispers grew louder again, and I froze. They weren't just in my head anymore. They were coming from behind me. I spun around, but there was no one there. Only the empty streets, the fog, and the oppressive silence. Then I saw it. At the far end of the street, at the intersection where the road curved into the woods, a figure stood, tall, cloaked, and hooded. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its gaze on me, as though it was waiting for me to move. And as I stood there, frozen in place, the figure started walking toward me, its movements smooth and deliberate. I took a step back, my heart pounding, but the figure didn't stop. It kept coming, closer, closer, until it was right in front of me. The hooded figure raised one long, thin arm and pointed toward the woods. Without thinking, I ran, my legs moving faster than they ever had before, as if the fear itself was pushing me forward. I reached the forest's edge, my breath ragged, and I didn't look back. I just ran. The trees were thick and close together, their branches tangled overhead, casting everything in deep shadows. The fog hadn't followed me into the woods, but the air was heavy with an eerie stillness. The only sound was the crunch of leaves beneath my feet and the distant howl of the wind. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed, that the forest itself was closing in on me. I ran for what felt like hours, my mind numb, until I came to a clearing. In the middle of the clearing stood a circle of stones, ancient and worn, like they had been here long before Millford was even founded. The stones were arranged in a perfect circle, and in the center of the circle, a fire burned, flickering weakly in the dark. I approached cautiously, my heart hammering in my chest. The fire wasn't warm. On the contrary, it felt cold, almost unnatural. But something drew me closer, an irresistible force that I couldn't explain. As I stepped into the circle, I felt the air shift, grow heavier, as though something had just taken notice of my presence. Suddenly, a voice broke through the stillness, a voice I recognized. The voice of the man from the diner, the one who had warned me, who had said, "You can't escape." I turned quickly, and there he was, standing at the edge of the circle, his face shadowed beneath his hat. His eyes glinted in the dim light of the fire, and for the first time I saw something darker lurking in his gaze. "You're here," he said, his voice low and cold. "You couldn't stay away, could you?" I opened my mouth to speak, to demand answers, but no words came out. The whispers grew louder again, surrounding me, drowning out all thoughts, all reason. "You don't understand, do you?" the man continued, his voice almost a whisper now, as if speaking to the darkness itself. "This is the town's true power. It draws you in, makes you a part of it. Once you've heard the whispers, once you've seen what lies beneath, there's no going back. You'll never leave Millford. You'll never escape the ritual." I took a step back, my mind reeling. "What ritual? What are you talking about?" He smiled, a thin, cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's not just a town, it's a living thing. The darkness under the earth, the thing that controls it all. It needs us to stay awake, to feed it. And you're part of it now. You can feel it, can't you? The pull, the way the town wraps around you, pulls you into its grip." I shook my head, trying to make sense of what he was saying. "No, this isn't real. You're lying. I just want to leave. I don't belong here." He laughed, a low, hollow sound. "You already belong here. You always have." The fire in the center of the circle flared up suddenly, and I jumped back in shock. For a moment, I thought I saw something moving in the flames, shapes, shadows, faces. But it was gone in an instant, leaving only the faint crackle of the fire and the oppressive silence that followed. "You're part of the ritual now," the man said, his voice echoing in my mind. "You'll never leave. No one leaves. We all serve it. We all feed it." I took another step back, my mind racing. What happens to me? What happens to anyone who stays? He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, and for the first time, I saw something else in his eyes. Something not human, something ancient and hungry. And then I realized what he meant. The fire wasn't just burning. It was alive. It was feeding. And I was next. The moment the man stepped closer, everything around me seemed to blur. The fire in the center of the circle flickered violently, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to stretch toward me like hungry fingers. I could feel the heat radiating from it, but it wasn't warmth. It was a suffocating kind of heat, like it was drawing all the life out of the air, leaving nothing but the burning emptiness of its hunger. I took another step back, but my legs felt weak, unsteady. I
couldn't tear my eyes away from the man. He wasn't just a man anymore. There was something about him, something other. His features were too sharp, his skin too pale, like he wasn't fully here, like he was an echo, a remnant of something older, something that had been buried deep beneath Millford for centuries. "You can feel it, can't you?" he asked, his voice low and smooth. "The pull, the hunger, it's in your blood now, it's in your soul, and once it's in you, there's no getting out." I wanted to scream, to run, to escape, but my body wouldn't obey. It was like the town itself was pulling me deeper, dragging me into its ancient roots, into its dark heart. The whispers had stopped, but now they had been replaced by something worse, an overwhelming sense of dread that washed over me in waves. The man reached out, his cold fingers brushing against my arm, sending a jolt of ice through my veins. "Don't fight it. You're already part of it. The ritual has begun." I jerked my arm away, but his grip tightened. My breath hitched as he pulled me closer to the fire. The shadows around us seemed to move, writhing in unnatural patterns, as if the very ground we stood on was alive, shifting, eager for what was to come. Suddenly the fire flared up again, brighter this time, almost blinding, and in the flames I saw something wrong. Faces, twisted and contorted, flashing in the fire's glow. Their eyes were wide with terror, their mouths open in silent screams. They were people, real people, people who had come before me, people who had been taken by this place, by the town, by the darkness beneath it. I gasped, stumbling back, and that's when I heard it, the low, guttural growl that seemed to come from the earth itself. It rumbled beneath my feet, like a beast awaking from a long slumber. The ground beneath me trembled, and the trees around the clearing seemed to lean in, as if listening to something far below. The man's grin widened, his teeth sharp, glinting in the firelight. "It's awake now. And it's hungry." I tried to break free from his grip, but it was like my body wasn't mine anymore. The pull of the fire, of the town, was too strong. My mind screamed for escape, but my body was already on its knees, drawn closer to the flames. And then I saw it. A figure rising from the fire. At first it was just a shape, a shadow in the flames, but as it emerged fully, I could see its true form. Tall, with elongated limbs and a body that seemed to flicker between solid and smoke. Its face was a blur, like it was made of shifting shadows, but its eyes were unmistakable. They glowed with an eerie, unnatural light, cold, empty eyes that stared right through me. The ground rumbled again, and the figure's voice, deep and booming, echoed in the air. "You have been chosen. You will serve us now." I tried to move, to run, but I couldn't. It was like the very air around me had thickened, making it impossible to breathe, impossible to escape. My chest tightened as I fell to the ground, my hands pressed against the cold earth. The man stood above me, watching with those same empty eyes. "You wanted to leave, but the town never lets you leave. It never lets anyone leave." A voice echoed in my head, a voice that sounded like it was coming from the very earth beneath me. "You are ours now, forever." I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face as the darkness crept in. I could feel the pull of the fire, the pull of the thing beneath the earth, wrapping around me, sinking into my bones. It was too late. There was no escape. I was part of the town now, part of the darkness. But just as the shadows closed in, I heard a sound, a voice, distant but familiar. "Run!" It was the waitress from the diner. She was there, standing at the edge of the clearing, her face pale and full of sorrow. "You have to run," she urged, her voice strained. "If you don't, it will take you. You have to leave now." I didn't know if I could move, but somehow I managed to push myself up. I felt weak, dizzy, but the thought of staying, of becoming one with the thing in the fire, drove me forward. The man's eyes turned toward her, his smile fading to a scowl. "You can't stop it. You can't save him." She stepped forward, her hands trembling, but her voice steady. I'm trying to save you." In that moment, the ground beneath us shook violently, and the earth cracked open, sending a shock wave through the clearing. The fire surged, wild and uncontrollable, but the figure in the flames seemed to falter, its form flickering. "Go!" the waitress shouted. "Now!" I didn't hesitate. I turned and ran. My legs felt like they were made of lead, but the fear of what was behind me pushed me forward. The fire roared behind me, and the darkness in the forest seemed to reach for me, but I kept running, faster and faster. The town, the forest, the fire, it was all closing in, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't let it take me. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing to the ground, gasping for air, but I didn't stop, not until I was far, far away from the clearing, from the fire, from the town. But as I lay there, in the dark, catching my breath, I realized one terrifying thing. The whispers had stopped, and the silence was worse.
The silence was suffocating. My chest heaved with each breath, the air colder now, sharper. The feeling of escape should have been a relief, but instead it only intensified the dread that had been crawling beneath my skin. I had run. I had made it out of the clearing, away from the fire, away from the thing beneath Millford. But the truth was, I hadn't truly escaped. I lay in the darkness of the woods, the fog now a distant, creeping memory, but the oppressive weight of the town's presence still hung over me like a shadow. I tried to gather my thoughts, to make sense of everything that had happened, but it all felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The fire, the figure, the man, the voices, the whispers, they weren't gone. They were with me, deep inside my mind, echoing in the corners of my consciousness. Every sound in the woods made me jump. Every rustle of leaves felt like a warning. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, even now, deep in the woods, far from the town. I forced myself to stand, my legs shaky from exhaustion, and stumbled forward, trying to make my way out of the forest. The town was close. Millford couldn't be far, but I had to get as far as I could, away from the thing beneath the earth, away from whatever had claimed that town and its people. As I walked, I thought of the waitress. She had tried to help me. She had tried to warn me, but I hadn't been able to ask her what she knew, what she was really trying to say. There was more to this place, more to the ritual, more to the darkness in Millford than I could understand. I reached the edge of the forest and came to a narrow road. It was the road I had walked into town on, the one that led out of Millford. I stood there for a long moment, looking down the path, wondering if I should just keep walking, if I should keep running. But then, I heard it, the whispers. At first it was a faint sound, barely noticeable, but then they grew louder. Not just whispers this time, but voices, familiar voices, coming from all directions. They were coming from behind me, from the road, from the trees. It was like the entire world around me was speaking, each voice overlapping the other, speaking in a language I couldn't understand. I turned, panic rising in my chest, and saw something moving in the distance. The shape of a person, standing at the edge of the forest. I couldn't make out who it was, but I knew it was someone from Millford, someone who had come to claim me, to bring me back. I started running again, but this time it wasn't fear that pushed me forward, it was desperation. I could feel the darkness at my back, closing in, wrapping itself around me like a noose. I had to get away. I had to leave. I didn't know how long I ran for, but when I finally stopped, the woods had given way to an open field. The moon hung low in the sky, casting pale light over the landscape. It was quiet here, the stillness almost peaceful in comparison to the chaos I had just left behind. But that peace didn't last long.
A sound broke the silence, a soft, distant thud. It came again. I turned slowly, my heart racing, and saw them, figures moving in the distance, tall and thin, cloaked in shadow. There were more of them this time. They were walking towards me, and as they moved, the earth beneath their feet seemed to tremble, as if the ground itself was responding to their presence. The whispers were back, louder now, a chorus of voices that rose from the earth, from the trees, from the air itself. I could hear words now, fragments of sentences that made no sense, but I could feel their meaning all the same. You are ours. You belong to us. You cannot leave. I backed away, my legs stiff, my body frozen in fear. But I couldn't move fast enough. The figures were closing in. I could hear their footsteps now, soft but steady. "Leave me alone," I whispered to myself, but the words felt weak, useless in the face of what was coming. They were too close now. I could see their faces, or what was left of them. They were empty, hollow. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, their skin pale and translucent. They didn't have bodies like people did. They were more like shadows given form, specters of the town, specters of Millford. One of them stepped forward. It was the man from the diner, his eyes hollow, his lips stretched in an unnatural grin. "You can't escape. You never could." I tried to speak, to shout, but no words came. The air around me was thick, suffocating, like the darkness itself was closing in, wrapping around my throat. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. And then I saw it. In the distance, at the edge of the field, a figure appeared, standing in the moonlight. It was her, the waitress. She was standing there, watching me with those same sad, tired eyes. "Run," she whispered, her voice cutting through the darkness. I didn't hesitate this time. I ran. The figures, the shadows, the whispers, they followed, but I didn't stop. I ran faster than I ever had before, my body burning with the effort, my lungs aching, but I couldn't stop. I had to keep going. And then I saw it. A car, a bright, shining light in the distance. It was just a shadow at first, but as I stumbled closer, I saw that it was real, a real car, a way out. I collapsed against it, my hands trembling as I reached for the door handle. The whispers were getting louder, the figures closer. They were right behind me. I yanked the door open and jumped inside. The car started with a roar, and I slammed the gas pedal to the floor, driving as fast as I could, my heart pounding, my mind screaming. But even as I drove, I couldn't escape it. The whispers didn't stop. They followed me, and as I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw them there, just beyond the edge of the car's headlights, standing in the field, watching me leave. The town, Millford, it wasn't done with me yet.
I kept driving, faster and faster, until the road stretched out before me like an endless tunnel. The lights of Millford were fading in the distance, but the weight of the town, the darkness that had been following me, clung to me like a shadow. I told myself I had escaped. I had left it behind, but deep down, I knew I wasn't free. Not really. The whispers were still there, echoing in my mind, in the air around me. They had followed me into the car, into my thoughts. No matter how fast I drove, no matter how far I went, they were always there. And the more I listened, the clearer the message became. You can't leave. You will never leave. I looked in the rearview mirror again, but the road behind me was empty. No figures, no shadows, just the stretch of asphalt disappearing into the night. But that didn't ease the tightness in my chest. It didn't quiet the voices. I couldn't escape the feeling that something was coming for me. Something was hunting me. I glanced at the clock on the dashboard. It was well past midnight. I hadn't seen a single car for miles, and the trees on either side of the road seemed to close in, their branches reaching for me like gnarled fingers. The darkness around me felt alive, watching, waiting for the right moment. Suddenly, the car lurched, the engine sputtered, and the headlights flickered.
My heart skipped a beat. I slammed my foot down on the gas, but the engine stalled. I tried again, but it was useless. The car came to a stop, the engine sputtering out completely. Panic rose in my chest. I wasn't far from Millford anymore. I could feel the pull, the whispers, louder now, filling my mind. I couldn't be stuck here. I couldn't go back. I grabbed the keys, trying to start the car again, but the dashboard flickered and went dark. I was alone, stuck. The silence around me was oppressive, but not comforting. The trees, the fog, the night, they felt like they were closing in on me, suffocating me. I knew I had to get out, get away from the car, from everything. But where would I go? What was left? My options were fading, and I was running out of time. I grabbed my phone, hoping for a signal, but the screen remained blank. No service, no connection, just me in the middle of nowhere, with no way of escaping what had already started. That's when I saw it. In the distance, faint at first, but growing closer, a light appeared, a flickering glow, like a candle. It was too far away to make out, but it didn't take long for me to realize what it was. Millford. The town had never let me go. It was calling me back. My heart pounded in my chest, my legs trembling as I opened the car door. I stepped out, the cold night air biting at my skin, and I looked down the road. The light was drawing me in, beckoning me like a flame to a moth. I could hear the whispers again, clearer than ever. Come back. You belong here. You are ours. I tried to take a step away, but my body refused to listen. The town, it wasn't letting me go. I could feel the ground beneath me shifting, the earth trembling beneath my feet. The darkness that had followed me from Millford was more than just a memory. It was real. It was alive. I ran as fast as I could, stumbling through the trees, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The light, Millford, was growing closer. The whispers were all around me now, louder and louder. They weren't just in my head anymore. They were in the wind, in the ground, in the trees. You are part of us. I pushed harder, faster, but the air grew thicker, colder. The light was blinding now, and I knew that I was running towards something I couldn't escape, toward the very thing that claimed Millford, the thing that had claimed me. I didn't know how long I ran. Time was an endless blur, the road in front of me a shifting labyrinth of shadow and light. My legs ached, my body felt numb, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't. And then, just as suddenly as it had all begun, I stopped. I found myself back at the edge of Millford, standing at the entrance to the town. The same familiar road, the same signposts, the same everything. I had returned. The town had pulled me back. I stumbled forward, my heart heavy with dread. I couldn't fight it anymore. The darkness, the whispers, the feeling of being trapped in a place where time had no meaning. It was all real. I stepped into the town, and the ground beneath my feet shifted once more. This time, I felt it in my bones, the deep, ancient pull. I wasn't just part of the town. I was part of the ritual, part of whatever dark force controlled it. The door to Millford wasn't just a doorway. It was a prison. I was never meant to leave, and now I was bound to it. The darkness claimed me, and I couldn't escape.
The moment I crossed the threshold of Millford, I felt it. The pulse of the town, like a living heart beneath the cobbled streets, thumping louder and louder in my chest. I was no longer just an outsider, a passerby. The town had consumed me. The whispers were deafening now, echoing in every direction, swirling around me like a storm. You are ours. You will stay. You will serve.
I stumbled down the street, my legs unsteady beneath me, as though the ground itself was trying to pull me deeper into the town. The lights flickered overhead, casting long, sickly shadows. The houses around me loomed tall and oppressive, their windows dark, watching. I could feel the town's eyes on me. Everyone knew. The town knew. The whispers weren't just in my head anymore. They were everywhere, inside the walls, in the trees, beneath the very earth beneath my feet. The entire town was alive, and I was part of it now. I tried to run again, my breath quick and shallow, but the streets twisted in impossible ways. What should have been a straight path seemed to loop back on itself, pulling me deeper into the heart of Millford. The fog, thick and suffocating, closed in around me, blurring the world, making everything feel surreal, like I was caught in some nightmarish dream. My vision blurred, and when I looked up, I saw them. Figures, more figures, emerging from the shadows. Tall, thin, with hollow eyes that reflected the eerie light from the flickering street lamps. The people of Millford, the ones who had been here before me, the ones who had been taken. And there, in the distance, I saw the figure again, the man from the diner. He stood at the edge of the street, watching me with those cold, dead eyes. His lips curled into a smile, but it was a smile that was not meant for comfort. It was the smile of someone who knew the truth of this town, someone who had become one with it, someone who was beyond saving. "You're here now," he said, his voice a low, almost reverent whisper. "You're part of it, part of the cycle." The cycle, the ritual. I felt sick to my stomach, like the very idea of it was suffocating me. I had tried to run, I had tried to escape, but there was no escaping this. Millford wasn't just a town, it was a prison built on an ancient, unspeakable force, and I had just stepped into its grip. As I stood there, the shadows around me seemed to stretch and bend. The streets weren't just empty anymore. They were filled with the lost, the souls of those who had come before me, those who had been consumed by the town. They moved silently, their eyes hollow, their faces empty, but they weren't really there anymore. They were just echoes, shadows, trapped in the web that Millford had spun. The man stepped closer, his shadow stretching long across the street. "You see now, don't you?" he asked, his voice cold and hollow. "There's no escape, not for you, not for anyone." My legs gave way beneath me, and I collapsed to the ground. The weight of the town's truth was too much to bear. I could feel it in my bones, in the marrow, in the air I breathed. This place had been here for longer than I could comprehend. Millford had always existed, had always taken, and it wasn't just a town, it was a living thing. It needed people to thrive, to feed on, the souls, the fear, the sacrifice. It all fed the darkness beneath the earth. The ground rumbled again, a deep, resonating growl that seemed to come from the very heart of Millford. It was as if the town was awakening, stretching its limbs, preparing for something far darker. The figure from the diner, he wasn't the leader, he wasn't the one in control. It was the force, the ancient evil that had anchored itself into the very soil of Millford. I tried to scream, but the words were choked off. It was useless. I was too deep, too far into the web of Millford. The whispers rose to a crescendo, enveloping me, swallowing my thoughts. "You will stay. You will serve. You are one of us." Suddenly, the fog parted, and I saw it. The church. The same church I had visited the night I first arrived. The same church where the statue had been, the one that had watched me. But now it was different. The doors were wide open, and the light from within wasn't warm. It was an invitation, a beckoning to step inside, to join the cycle. Without thinking, I found myself walking towards the church, my feet moving on their own, dragging me forward. The whispers, the voices, the force of Millford, it all pulled me in. I had no choice. I couldn't resist. As I stepped into the church, the air grew colder. The smell of incense and dust filled my nose, but it wasn't just any incense. It was the scent of something ancient, something that had been burning for centuries. The altar in front of me was empty, but the space felt charged, as though something was about to happen. The flames in the candles flickered wildly, casting eerie shadows on the stone walls. I looked around, feeling an overwhelming sense of arrival, like I had walked into a place where time had no meaning. The figure from the diner was there, standing at the altar now, his eyes fixed on me. He smiled again. "You've made it. Welcome to your new home." And as I looked around, I saw them, all the lost. They were there, standing in the pews, their eyes locked on me, their faces frozen in expressions of sorrow and acceptance. They were waiting for me to join them, to become one with the town. The door behind me slammed shut with a deafening crash. There was no escape. There never had been. I couldn't move. The weight of the church, the ancient force of Millford had pressed me down, holding me in place. The whispers, now deafening, seemed to echo not only in my mind, but in the very walls of the church. It felt like the air was alive with the sounds of 1,000 souls, each one lost, each one waiting, each one trapped in the endless cycle of Millford. The man at the altar, no, the thing at the altar, smiled, his eyes glowing with a cold, merciless light. "You've been chosen," he said, his voice like sandpaper scraping against my skin. "Just like the others, just like the ones before you. You'll stay here. You'll become one of us." I wanted to scream, to shout, to run, but no words escaped me. My body refused to obey, locked in place, my legs trembling beneath me. The shadows in the church stretched, twisted, and curled like tendrils of smoke reaching for me, for my soul. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. The people in the pews didn't move. They didn't speak. Their eyes followed me, empty and lifeless, but there was something in them, something that spoke of years, decades, centuries of waiting for the next soul, the next victim to come and take their place. The man, the thing at the altar, stepped forward, his movements graceful but unnerving, like a puppet on invisible strings. He reached out with one hand, beckoning me closer, and I felt my feet move toward him. I was no longer walking. It was like I was being pulled toward him, my body no longer under my control. "You belong here now," he said, his lips curling in a sickening grin. "We all belong here." I stopped in front of him, my breath ragged, my heart racing. He reached out, his cold fingers brushed my cheek. His touch sent a jolt of ice through my skin. The moment his fingers touched me, everything changed. The whispers stopped, the air grew still, and the shadows in the room seemed to retreat, as though the room itself was holding its breath. For a moment, everything was silent. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. And then The ground beneath my feet trembled. A deep, resonating hum filled the church, coming from below, from the earth itself. "It's time," the thing said, his voice low, reverent. The altar began to glow, an unnatural light seeping from the cracks in the stone, and the ground shifted beneath me. I tried to step back, but my legs wouldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, my body betraying me. I could feel the earth beneath me moving, shifting, as though it was coming alive, ready to claim me. And then I saw it. A crack opened in the floor of the church, a dark abyss yawning wide before me. The light from the altar seemed to bend and twist, casting long, jagged shadows into the pit. It was as if the entire town was alive, feeding on what lay below. The ritual had begun, and there was no going back. "No!" I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the overwhelming hum of the earth. It was futile. The town's pull, the force beneath it, had already claimed me. I was no longer just an outsider. I was part of it. I had become part of the cycle. The thing at the altar stepped back, bowing its head in a grotesque gesture of reverence. "Welcome," it whispered. "Welcome to your new home." As I looked around, I saw the figures from the pews beginning to move. Their bodies were slow, unnatural, jerking as if they were puppets controlled by invisible strings. They were coming toward me, their hollow eyes locked on mine. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. I felt their cold hands on my shoulders, their grip like ice. And then something shifted inside me. I could feel it, deep within my chest. The darkness beneath Millford, the force that had pulled me in, was inside me now, feeding on my fear, feeding on my very soul. The voices came again, this time louder, more demanding, more forceful. "You are one of us." The words were like a wave crashing over me, filling my mind with the truth of Millford. I had been chosen long before I had ever arrived. The town didn't just consume people, it transformed them, pulling their souls into the earth, binding them to the land forever. This wasn't just a town, it was a living, breathing thing, and it needed us. It needed all of us. As the figures surrounded me, I felt myself sinking into the ground, the darkness pulling me deeper, claiming me, making me part of it. The whispers grew louder, the voices in my head blending with the sound of the earth, until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. I was being absorbed. I was becoming one with Millford. The town had won, and now I was part of its eternal, unyielding darkness. The shadows closed in around me, and the last thing I saw was the altar, glowing with that same unnatural light. And in the distance, the town, the people of Millford, standing silently, waiting for the next soul to arrive. And as I was consumed, I knew one thing for certain.
The darkness took me, but it didn't end. There was no final breath, no closure, no escape. The world around me shifted, twisted, and blurred, as if reality itself was bending and collapsing under the weight of Millford's power. I was no longer just in the church, no longer just in the town. I was everywhere and nowhere. The whispers, now louder than ever, filled my mind, flooding my thoughts. You are part of us now. You will serve. You will stay forever. I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone. The very act of trying to fight was futile. It wasn't pain that consumed me, nor was it fear. It was something far worse: acceptance.
The feeling of being wrapped in the earth, buried under layers of history, of darkness, slowly began to sink in. My mind, once sharp with terror and confusion, dulled to a numb state of realization. I was part of Millford now. I had been chosen, not just as a victim, but as a conduit. The town's hunger had claimed me, and now I would feed it, just like all those who came before me. There was no going back, no escape. The cycle was endless. I could hear the voices of those who had come before me, the lost souls of Millford. They were not just memories, they were echoes, frozen in time, trapped in an eternal loop of suffering and ritual. They were me now, and I was them. We were all bound together in the endless, unbreakable cycle that kept Millford alive, fed, and thriving in the darkness. But even as I was consumed, even as I became part of the town, part of the ritual, I heard a voice. It was faint, barely a whisper, but it cut through the chaos and the madness. It was a familiar voice, hers, the waitress, the woman who had tried to warn me, who had tried to save me. I didn't know if she had escaped or if she too had become part of the cycle, but her voice was there, in the dark. You can break it. You can stop it. I didn't understand. How could I break it? How could I stop this endless cycle when it had already consumed me, when it had already consumed everything? But the voice persisted. It wasn't just in my head. It was in the ground, in the walls, in the very bones of Millford. It was calling out, desperate, pleading. Remember who you are. You have to remember who you were. You have to fight. It's not too late. You can break the ritual. The whispers around me grew frantic, angry. No, you cannot leave. You belong to Millford now. The voices of the lost souls joined in, louder, desperate, pulling me further into the darkness. But in the chaos, the voice of the waitress remained steady, calm. Remember who you are. I didn't know if I could. My body felt like it was fading, dissolving into the dark. But the voice, it gave me a spark of something, a thread of defiance. The darkness was powerful. It was ancient. It had been here long before Millford had ever been founded. But there was something inside me, something deep, something that once had been alive. I tried to fight, to push back against the darkness, against the weight of the town's hunger, but it was like trying to move through cement. My mind screamed, but it was suffocated by the voices, by the memories of those who had fallen before me. But then, a sudden flash, a memory of a time before Millford, before I had ever arrived. The first time I had seen the town, the first time I had walked through its streets. I had been drawn to it, yes, but there had been something else, something wrong about the town from the beginning. The whispers had started long before I had ever arrived. They were always there. The people in Millford weren't just part of the town, they were trapped. The town had chosen them, just as it had chosen me. The ritual had claimed them, twisted them into something else. But they had fought. Some of them had fought back, even in the darkest moments. They had remembered who they were, and they had tried to escape, tried to break the cycle. I could do the same. The waitress's voice echoed in my mind again. You can break it. I didn't know how, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let Millford win, not without a fight. The earth trembled beneath me again, the ground shaking as if it were alive, waiting to devour me. But this time, I didn't just lie down and accept it. I fought back. The shadows around me started to recede, and the light from the altar grew weaker. The whispers faltered, growing softer, less urgent. The darkness was retreating, fading. I could feel it, the power of the town, the force that had consumed me, that had consumed so many others, was fading. I couldn't stay here any longer. I had to escape. I closed my eyes, focusing all my energy on that one thought, escape. And then, just as the darkness began to close in again, I broke through. The air changed, light filled the space around me, and the whispers, those terrible, suffocating whispers, faded into silence. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer in the church, no longer in Millford. I was standing on the side of a road, the early morning light filtering through the trees. The sun was rising, painting the sky with soft, golden hues. The air was fresh, clean, normal. But as I looked around, I knew I had escaped for now. Millford wasn't gone. It was still there, just beyond the horizon, waiting, biding its time. But I had broken the cycle. I was free for now. But as I walked away, I could feel it. Millford's eyes were still on me, and its whispers were still there, deep inside my mind. I had left its grip, but I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Not ever. Millford would always come for me.
The road stretched out before me, but every step felt like I was being followed, as though the shadows were never truly gone. The air, so clear and crisp in the early morning light, felt wrong. Something lingered, something invisible but undeniable. I couldn't shake the feeling that Millford was still with me, its grip on my soul unyielding, no matter how far I walked. The farther I walked, the more I realized that freedom was an illusion. I was no longer just a person, I was a mark, a piece of the cycle. Millford had touched me, claimed me, and no matter where I went, it would always be a part of me. It was embedded in my bones, in my mind, in my very existence. I had been chosen by the town, and once Millford chose you, there was no going back, no running far enough, no escaping. I tried to keep walking, hoping that daylight would somehow rid me of the fear, of the weight that still hung heavy in my chest. But I wasn't alone. I could feel it. The pull was still there, faint, distant, but undeniable. And as I walked through the forest surrounding the road, I realized that the world around me had changed. The trees, once solid and real, now seemed distant, like something out of a dream. They loomed overhead, their branches twisted and reaching, bending in unnatural ways. The sunlight filtered through them in odd patterns, casting dark, sharp shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. It was like the very earth beneath my feet was alive, watching me. I paused for a moment, looking around. The feeling of being watched had only intensified. The sound of rustling leaves, the creak of branches, it all seemed to echo too loudly in the quiet, almost as if the forest was listening. Suddenly, I heard it. A voice, soft at first, like a whisper carried by the wind, but then it grew louder, clearer. "Come back to us." I froze, my heart skipping a beat. The voice wasn't in my head. It was real. It was coming from the trees, from the shadows. It was coming from Millford. I shook my head, willing myself to move, but my feet felt heavy, as though they were rooted to the ground. The voice was calling again, and this time I could hear more than just one. It was a chorus of voices, the lost souls of Millford, all beckoning me to return, to join them in their eternal cycle. "You are one of us. You will never be free." I clenched my fists, trying to steady myself, but the whispers only grew louder. The pull, that dark force, it was drawing me back to Millford. I could feel it in my chest, pulling at my very soul. I had thought I had escaped, but I was wrong. The town wasn't done with me. I turned and started running, my legs pumping, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I couldn't stop. I had to outrun the darkness, outrun the voices. The trees blurred around me, the road stretching out endlessly, but the whispers followed, relentless.
You belong to Millford. You belong to us. I could hear their footsteps now, too. Not mine, but someone else's. Something was chasing me, keeping pace with me through the forest. I didn't dare look back. I couldn't, but I could hear the unmistakable sound of movement, the crunch of twigs underfoot, the rustling of leaves as someone followed me, getting closer with every passing second. I pushed myself harder, my lungs burning, my body aching, but the whispers wouldn't stop. You will return. You will never escape. I couldn't outrun them. I knew that now. No matter how fast I ran, the town was always there, always pulling at me, always calling me back to its dark heart. And then, as if on cue, the fog rolled in, slowly at first, like a soft mist creeping along the ground. But then it thickened, spreading like an ocean, swallowing everything in its path. The world around me disappeared, the trees vanishing into the gray, the road lost beneath the swirling mass of fog. I stopped, panting, my chest heaving, and I realized something terrifying. I was lost. The whispers had stopped, the sounds of pursuit were gone, but the silence was worse. It was suffocating. I couldn't see anything, couldn't hear anything. The fog had swallowed me whole, and I had no idea where I was anymore. I stumbled forward, my arms outstretched in front of me, trying to find something, anything. But the fog was thick, and it pressed in from all sides, blocking out the world. And then, as I took another step, I felt it, a presence, behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there, no one, just the fog swirling in the distance. But I could feel it, someone was standing there, watching me. I didn't need to see it to know it. I could feel that same oppressive, suffocating feeling I had felt the moment I had set foot in Millford. And then, from the fog, a figure emerged. It was the same figure, the man from the diner, the man who had warned me. But now he wasn't just standing there, he was moving toward me, his steps slow, deliberate. His eyes were empty, hollow, but there was something more in them now, something darker. You thought you escaped, but the town never lets you go. You'll never be free. I stepped back, my legs shaking, but my body wouldn't obey. The darkness had followed me. It had found me. I wasn't free, and I never would be. The man stepped closer, his shadow growing larger, swallowing the fog around us. His smile was wide, unnerving, and his words sliced through the silence. Welcome back. Millford never lets go of its own. And then, with a final, sickening lurch, everything went dark.
When I opened my eyes again, the world around me had changed. The fog was gone, but it had been replaced by something far more suffocating, the thick, dark walls of a place I knew all too well. I was back in Millford. The streets were empty, but they felt full of eyes, full of watching, silent watchers waiting for me to acknowledge their presence. I could feel their gaze on me, as though they were all waiting for something, for me, for the next soul to be claimed, to become part of their endless cycle. I tried to move, to turn around and escape, but the ground beneath me felt like it was pulling me down. The familiar hum of the town's pulse, the heartbeat that had drawn me in from the beginning, was stronger now, louder. It was everywhere, vibrating in my chest, filling my mind, pulling me into its depths. I didn't have to look around to know I wasn't alone. There was something behind me, something that followed me, waiting for me to acknowledge it. You can't run anymore. The man from the diner's voice echoed through the empty street. His voice was clearer now, more present. He was here, and he was not alone. I
turned slowly, dreading the sight that awaited me. The figure stood there, but now he was not just a figure. He was an entity, a being that stretched beyond the shape of a man. His form seemed to shimmer, flicker in and out of focus, like something that shouldn't exist but did anyway. His eyes glowed with a strange, cold light, like they were reflecting the very soul of the town. "You told you," he whispered, stepping closer. "You cannot escape. You've crossed the line. You belong to Millford now, all of you." I wanted to speak, to scream, to do anything, but my mouth was dry and my voice wouldn't come. My body was heavy, weighed down by the energy of the town, by the dark force that pulsed beneath the ground. Every step I took felt like I was sinking further, deeper into the town's grasp. I could feel it in my chest, clawing at me from the inside. "You've already seen it," the figure at the altar said, his voice barely a whisper now. "The ritual, the cycle, it was never meant to be broken. You are a part of it now, like the others, like all those before you." I wanted to run, to flee from him, but the streets of Millford seemed endlessly stretched. No matter which direction I turned, it was the same, silent, dark, suffocating. The houses, the empty windows, all watched, waiting. "You don't understand, do you?" he said, his lips curling into a twisted smile. "Millford isn't just a town, it's alive, and you are part of it now, forever." Suddenly the ground beneath me shook, a low rumble that came from deep below, like the earth itself was groaning. The streets began to crack, and from the cracks, shadows crawled, dark, formless things that slithered out of the earth, merging with the fog. The shadows were thick, like liquid darkness, and they moved like they had a mind of their own. I stepped back, panic rising in my chest, but there was nowhere to go. The town had closed in around me. Millford wasn't just a place, it was a living, breathing entity, a prison that fed on the souls of those it claimed. And now, I was part of it. I could feel it in my veins, the cold presence wrapping around me, sinking deep into my soul. "You're not the first," the figure said, his voice dark and steady, "and you won't be the last. Millford always needs more, always needs new blood to keep it alive." The shadows began to circle me, growing thicker, pulling me to the center of the street. I couldn't move. I couldn't break free. I was paralyzed, trapped in the very heart of Millford. The whispers were louder now, frantic, calling out from the shadows. "You belong to us. You will stay. You will serve." I could feel the darkness seeping into my skin, into my very soul. The town was claiming me, just as it had claimed so many before me. My body felt like it was turning to stone, my limbs stiffening, the blood in my veins running cold. But through it all, there was a single thought, a thought that I couldn't shake, that burned through the haze of the town's hold on me. I have to fight. The whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts, but I focused on that one idea. I have to fight. I fought with every ounce of strength I had left, pushing against the pull of Millford, against the darkness that tried to swallow me. The ground beneath me trembled, but I wouldn't let it take me. I wouldn't let it claim me, not without a fight. For a moment, the darkness faltered. The figure at the altar, the man from the diner, he hesitated, his eyes flashing with something like surprise. "You can't break it," he said, his voice strained. "You cannot break the cycle." But I kept fighting. I kept pushing back, refusing to let Millford take me, to consume me completely. I focused on the memory of the forest, the air, the light, the feeling of freedom. It was enough. The The ground shook violently, and for the first time, the town recoiled. The shadows wavered, the whispers faltered, and I felt the pull of Millford weaken just for a moment. I could feel the barrier between myself and the darkness cracking, crumbling. But it wasn't enough yet. I had broken free, for now, but Millford wasn't finished with me. It would always come for me. The darkness was patient. It always waited, and one day when I least expected it, it would return. But for now, I was free.
I don't know how long I was free for. Minutes, hours, days, it didn't matter. The moment I thought I had escaped, I realized the truth. Millford was a part of me now. It had shaped me, broken me, and it would never truly let me go. The world outside seemed unchanged, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had shifted. As I walked away from the town, every step felt heavier. The forest, the open road, it all seemed too quiet, too empty, as though the very air had thickened, like I was walking through a dream or a memory that wasn't mine to own. I tried to keep moving forward, but the weight of the town's grasp clung to me. I knew deep down that the town was still there, just beyond the horizon, waiting for the right moment. The whispers hadn't stopped. Even when I was miles away, I could hear them, echoes of Millford calling me back. I tried to live a normal life after that. I tried to pretend the town hadn't left a mark on me. I moved to a new city, changed my job, met new people, but it didn't help. Every time the wind howled or the shadows grew long, I could feel it. Millford's presence. It was with me in every dark corner, in every moment of stillness. I'd been warned by the waitress. She had told me that the town never let you go. I thought I understood. I thought I was just being paranoid. But the truth was worse than I had imagined. I thought I had escaped, but Millford had only given me a reprieve, a pause, and the longer I stayed away from it, the more it waited for me to return. I couldn't stay where I was forever. No matter how much I tried to outrun it, Millford would always find me. The pull of the town was too strong. It was like a thread tied to the very marrow of my bones, tugging me back to where I had once belonged. One night, as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of my new apartment, I heard it again. Soft at first, just a faint hum in the distance, but then louder, clearer. Come back. It wasn't just in my head. I could feel it, the same pull I had felt when I first set foot in Millford. It was calling me, pulling at me, dragging me back to the place I had thought I had escaped. The darkness in my mind seemed to grow with the sound, stretching, suffocating, like I couldn't breathe without it. I tried to fight it, tried to push it away, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent. It wasn't just a call anymore, it was a demand. You cannot run forever. I knew then that it wasn't over. It would never be over. Millford had claimed me, and no matter how far I ran, no matter how many lives I tried to build outside of its reach, it would always come for me. It would always pull me back. And so, as the night grew darker and the whispers filled my mind,
I knew what I had to do. I stood up from my bed, my hands trembling as I reached for the door. The call had grown too strong, too insistent. I couldn't fight it anymore. The cycle had already begun. I wasn't free. None of us were. With every step I took, the shadows seemed to move with me, as if they were alive, guiding me, pushing me forward. I was walking back into Millford, back into its heart, back into its grip. There was no escape this time. The town had waited. It had patiently bided its time. And now, as I walked down that familiar twisted road, I knew one thing for certain. Millford had never let me go, and it never would. It was a part of me now. It always would be.
I didn't look back. I couldn't. The road that led me back to Millford felt like it stretched into infinity, the town's call growing louder with every step. The air grew thick, heavy with anticipation. The very atmosphere felt wrong, as if the land itself was breathing, waiting for me to return. I wasn't sure if I was walking or if something else was pulling me forward, guiding me like a marionette. But I knew one thing with every step I took. There was no choice anymore. Millford had always been a part of me, and now it was time for me to return. As I walked through the forest that surrounded the town, the trees began to shift. The branches twisted unnaturally, like they were trying to grab me, pulling me deeper into their dark embrace. The whispers, soft at first, then louder, insistent, were all around me. They came from the trees, from the ground, from the very air I breathed. Welcome back. You belong here now. There is no escape. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. The town had claimed me, and now I was walking into its open arms. The road emerged from the woods, and there it was, Millford, the town that had haunted my every thought, my every dream, the town that had never let me go. The streets were empty, but the air was thick with a sense of waiting, of watching. I could feel the eyes of the town on me, the lost souls, the ones who had been taken, who had become part of the town's endless hunger. And then I saw them. The figures in the distance, moving slowly toward me, their forms flickering in and out of focus like shadows in the dark. They weren't real, not anymore, but they were there. The souls of the lost, the souls that Millford had claimed, that it had twisted and reshaped. I walked toward them, each step taking me deeper into the heart of the town, deeper into the very heart of the darkness. The whispers grew louder, filling my mind, my soul. You're one of us now. You've always been one of us. The man from the diner appeared, standing at the entrance to the church. His face was twisted in a grotesque grin, his eyes hollow, his form flickering like a broken image in a mirror. "You've returned," he said, his voice a low rasp, but there was something new in it, something darker, more powerful. "We knew you would. Once the pull begins, once it takes hold, there's no escape." I stood frozen, unable to move. I could feel it now, more than ever, the pull of the town, the weight of Millford's dark heart, and I realized something that chilled me to my very core. I wasn't just part of the town, I was fueling it. The town fed on souls, on fear, on desperation, on suffering, and I had become part of that cycle. I had always been part of it. "You were chosen," The figure from the diner continued, stepping forward slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. We all were. Millford needs us. It needs to feed. And when the time comes, we will feed it. All of us. I wanted to fight, wanted to run, but I knew deep down that it wouldn't matter. Millford had won. The town had claimed me, body and soul. You were never meant to leave, he said, his grin widening, his teeth too sharp, too unnatural. The whispers crescendoed around me, a deafening roar in my ears. I could hear the voices of the lost, the souls that had been taken before me. They spoke in unison now, their voices raw, filled with the same hollow desperation that I now felt in my chest. You can't escape. You can't fight it. You are one of us. I stepped forward, compelled by an unseen force, drawn to the church, to the altar that loomed before me. The fire in the hearth was burning hotter now, its light twisting and warping in unnatural ways. The shadows in the corners of the room moved like they had lives of their own, creeping along the walls toward the altar. The figure from the diner stepped aside, letting me pass. His eyes gleamed with something sickeningly satisfied. "It's time," he said, his voice cold, final. I didn't want to step forward. I didn't want to cross the threshold of the altar, but I could feel it now. The energy of Millford, of the dark force beneath it all, was inside me. It was pulling me to it, pulling me to the center of the ritual, to the very heart of the town. I had been marked, claimed, and now there was no choice. I stepped forward, and the floor beneath me groaned. The walls of the church seemed to tremble, as if they were coming alive, watching me, waiting. And then I saw it. In the center of the altar, a figure began to emerge from the darkness. It was the thing that had always been there, the force that had haunted Millford, that had claimed so many souls before mine. It was large, dark and alive, a shape that flickered and morphed, its outline constantly shifting, like something that shouldn't exist. Its eyes, if they could even be eyes, were black voids, deep and endless, staring straight through me. I could feel its hunger, I could feel its need, and it was calling me to join it, to feed it. And I knew, with that final horrible realization, that I was no longer just a victim. I was part of it. I was a sacrifice to the town's eternal hunger. There was no escaping it. Millford had claimed me, and now I would become part of the darkness.
The moment I crossed the telcher of the altar, the air around me thickened, the very fabric of the space around me seeming to warp and distort. I felt as though I was no longer standing in a physical place, but in the heart of something much older, much darker. The walls of the church seemed to fade into the shadows, leaving only the altar and the ever-watching darkness in front of me. The creature that stood there, it was no longer a figure. It was the town, the force that had grown beneath Millford, the thing that had always been there, feeding off the souls of the lost. Its form seemed to grow and contract like a massive, writhing mass of shadow, with flickers of light that almost resembled faces. The faces of the lost, faces of those who had come before me, faces of those who had been consumed by Millford. I couldn't move. My body was frozen, my legs unable to obey. It was as if my entire being was being absorbed by the thing in front of me, swallowed into the very darkness that had haunted me since I first arrived. And then I heard it. A voice. The voice of the thing, the force beneath Millford. But it wasn't just in my mind anymore. It was all around me, a low, guttural sound that vibrated through my bones, the very air pulsing with its power. "Welcome back," it whispered, the words shaking the air itself. "You are finally here, finally a part of us. You have fed us, and now you will become us." The words struck me like a physical blow, and for the first time I was aware of the truth. I had never truly been free. Millford hadn't just been a place, it was a force, an ancient, powerful force that thrived on souls, on the fear of those who walked its streets. And now it had claimed me, just as it had claimed so many before me. The shadows around the altar began to move, swirling and shifting, their forms growing larger and more terrifying with every passing second. The faces in the darkness twisted and stretched, their mouths opening in silent screams, their eyes empty. They were all lost, lost to the town, lost to the hunger that Millford fed. I felt a pull, a tug in my chest, as though something was ripping through me, forcing me to join them. I could feel the darkness seeping into my skin, into my very soul. It was inescapable. I was part of it now. There was no fighting it. I struggled to breathe, but the air in the church grew thick, suffocating. The whispers grew louder, pressing against my ears, drowning out everything else. "You belong to Millford." I wanted to scream, to shout, but my voice was gone. My body was no longer my own. I had become a part of it, a part of the cycle that had been set in motion long before I had ever arrived. "You will serve us." The figure at the altar, the force that had claimed Millford, seemed to stretch forward. It reached out with tendrils of shadow, wrapping around me like chains, pulling me closer to the center of the altar. I wanted to resist, but I couldn't. The power of the town was overwhelming, and it was pulling me into its depths, into the very heart of the darkness that had consumed so many before me. As the darkness enveloped me, I saw it, something in the distance, a figure standing just beyond the shadows, watching me. It was the waitress. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with sorrow, but there was something else, something important in her gaze. She was reaching out to me, her hands trembling, as though she was trying to pull me back, to save me from the darkness. But it was too late. I was already lost. I could hear her voice, faint but clear, cutting through the cacophony in my mind. "Remember who you are. You can still fight. It's not too late." I could barely hear her over the cacophony of the whispers, but her words sparked something in me, a flicker of hope. Could I fight? Could I resist? The darkness tightened its grip on me, but I pushed back, summoning every ounce of strength I had left. I wasn't ready to give in, not yet. "You belong to Millford," the force beneath Millford roared, its voice like 1,000 cries of anguish. "You belong to Millford." I fought, not with my body, but with my mind, with the memory of who I had been before the town had claimed me. The faces of the lost, of the people who had fallen into the town's grip, flashed before me, and I understood something. Millford had fed on them, had consumed them, but they had fought. Even in their last moments, they had fought. They had remembered who they were, and in that fleeting moment of defiance, they had found freedom, even if just for a moment. I can fight too, I thought. I can fight for my soul. With every ounce of willpower, I pushed back against the darkness, against the force that tried to pull me into its depths.
I focused on the one thing that had stayed with me all this time, the waitress's voice, the reminder, remember who you are. The shadows around me shuddered, the whispers faltering for the briefest moment. The grip of Millford loosened just enough for me to take a step back, just enough for me to feel the faintest flicker of freedom. But it wasn't enough. The darkness roared, and the force around me surged forward, stronger than before. It had me in its grip again, and it wasn't going to let go. This is it. There's no escape. But even in the face of that overwhelming truth, a new thought crossed my mind. Maybe there was a way out. Maybe there was more to the town's power than just fear. Maybe, if I could remember enough of myself, I could break the cycle. The struggle wasn't over. It couldn't be.
Segment 17. The Last Stand. The darkness had me. It had taken me completely this time, and I was starting to fade. The oppressive weight of Millford's force wrapped around me, dragging me further into its endless cycle. But somewhere, deep inside, there was a flicker of resistance, a last ember of who I had been. The thing that had claimed me, Millford itself, was pressing down on me, suffocating me, pulling me toward the very heart of its power. But I wasn't ready to give up. I couldn't be. I had seen too many lost souls before me. I had seen the horror of what Millford could do. I couldn't let myself become just another one of them. The shadows seemed to tighten their grip on me, warping my vision, smothering the last remnants of light in the church. I could barely move. My limbs were heavy. My mind was clouded, but somehow I found a shred of clarity. I focused on the feeling in my chest, the feeling of something alive, something powerful, something that was still me. The whispers were everywhere now, filling every inch of my mind, urging me to give in. They weren't just whispers anymore. They were voices, hundreds of voices, all overlapping, telling me the same thing. You belong here. You will never leave. You will never be free. I shook my head, trying to push them out. They wouldn't stop. They wouldn't let me go. But there was one voice, her voice, the waitress. Her words cut through the chaos like a sharp knife. Remember who you are. It was enough. Just those few words were enough to break through the fog of fear, enough to ignite the spark of defiance within me once more. Remember who you are. The strength that had been buried deep inside me began to awaken. I wasn't just some lost soul to be devoured by Millford. I was me. I had a past. I had a future. I had a life before this nightmare, and I refused to let it go. I focused on the altar before me, the source of Millford's power. The thing in the shadows, Millford itself, was feeding on me, feeding on the souls it had already claimed. But I knew now, deep inside, that it wasn't invincible. It wasn't all-powerful. I had the strength to fight. I had the will to break free. I gathered all the force of my mind, all the memories of who I was, of what had come before this nightmare. I reached out, metaphorically, with every part of my being, and I attacked the darkness that surrounded me. Not with my hands, not with my body, but with my spirit. The shadows recoiled. The force that had consumed Millford, that had kept it alive, faltered for a moment. A crack appeared in the solid darkness, a flicker of light. For a brief moment, I could see the world again. The walls of the church, the altar, the shifting shadows, they were still there, but now they were beginning to lose their grip on me. Millford was breaking. It's not too late. The voices in my head grew frantic, the force of Millford's hunger desperate, but I didn't stop. I pressed harder. I fought back, not with fear, but with the very thing that had drawn me into this mess in the first place, my will to live. I had lived before Millford. I had a life, a future, something worth fighting for.
and that was something Millford could never take from me. The shadows trembled. The whispers turned into screams, the cries of the lost souls who had been pulled into Millford's grasp. But now, those souls were fading. Their forms flickered like old memories, like images in a dream. Millford, for the first time in centuries, was losing its hold. But it wasn't just enough to fight back. I realized that if I wanted to break the cycle, if I wanted to stop Millford from continuing to feed on souls, I had to take away its power completely. I had to destroy the very heart of it. I turned my attention back to the altar, to the thing at the center of it all, the dark, writhing force that had consumed Millford for so long. It wasn't just a creature, it was the source, the lifeblood of the town, the reason Millford could never die. The altar was glowing now, pulsating, the dark energy swirling around it, feeding on my fear. I focused on it, pushing all my remaining strength into the fight. I couldn't just leave. I had to finish this. I had to end it. I stepped forward, my hands shaking, but my mind clear. The shadows fought against me, tugging at my legs, pulling at my soul, but I pushed forward, one step at a time. The whispers grew louder, angrier. "You can't stop it. You belong to us." I ignored them. I reached out to the altar, to the very core of the darkness. The energy was crackling, filling the air with a terrible hum, but I focused, and I did the one thing I had never done before. I let go. I let go of the fear. I let go of the pain. I let go of the need to fight, and instead I embraced what had always been a part of me, the strength of my own will. The altar shattered. The darkness around me screamed, a sound so terrible it made my bones rattle. The world trembled as Millford's grip on me weakened, and then broke. The air cleared. The whispers stopped. The shadows, the hunger, the force of Millford, they were gone. I stood there, breathing heavily, my body aching from the battle, but the town was silent now. Millford had lost its power. The darkness had faded, and for the first time, I felt truly free. But even as I took my first steps away from the altar, I knew the truth. Millford was never truly gone. It would always be there, waiting, biding its time, and I was always going to remember.
I thought I had done it. I thought I had broken the cycle, shattered the darkness that had plagued Millford for so long. As I stood in the center of the church, surrounded by the crumbling remnants of what had once been the altar, I could feel the weight lifting from my chest, as though something heavy had been removed from my soul. The whispers had stopped. The shadows, those dark, writhing things that had haunted me, were gone. There was nothing left but silence. For the first time since my arrival, I could breathe. I walked through the ruins of the church, the remnants of the altar crackling and fading into the darkness. The air was still thick with the remnants of the dark energy that had consumed Millford, but it was weakening, fading into nothingness. I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was the end. Perhaps Millford was finished. But even as the thought crossed my mind, a strange feeling began to settle in my gut, a sense of unease that I couldn't shake. The feeling that I had missed something, that even though the town seemed to have lost its grip, there was still something left, something waiting. I paused near the door, my hand gripping the cold metal of the handle. The silence outside seemed so normal. The world, for the first time, seemed untouched by the horrors I had faced. But then I heard it again. A whisper, faint at first but unmistakable. It was there. It was still in me. I froze, my hand still on the door handle, my body tense with fear. It wasn't just in my head this time. The whisper was real.
It was in the air. It was coming from the ground beneath my feet. You can't escape. I turned around quickly, scanning the room, my pulse racing. The church was empty, the shadows had faded, but the feeling, the presence was still there. I felt it pulling at the edges of my mind, as though Millford had never truly let me go. It was like a thread stretching from the depths of the town, still attached to me. The whispers grew louder, clearer, and this time I didn't fight it. I listened. You're part of it now. You'll never be free. The words felt like they were sinking into my skin, into my soul, each syllable carrying the weight of everything that had happened. Millford had claimed me, not just in body, but in spirit. It had marked me, and no matter how far I ran, no matter how much I tried to move on, it would always be there, inside me. I closed my eyes, clenching my fists, trying to overcome the overwhelming sense of dread that crept into my bones. I had done what I could. I had broken the cycle. I had shattered the altar. I had escaped the grip of the town. But the truth, the undeniable truth, was that Millford never lets go. The town is a part of me now, and the darkness that fed me, would always be there. I opened my eyes again and glanced at the door. There was nowhere escape. There was nowhere left to run. You belong to us. The voice was clearer now, stronger, but instead of fear, instead of resignation, I felt something else, a sudden intense clarity. I wasn't just a victim. I wasn't just a lost soul. I was part of something far larger than myself, far darker than anything I could have imagined. And maybe, just maybe, there was a way to use it, to bend it to my will. Millford was not just a place, it was alive, and I had become part of its essence, part of its hunger. But that didn't mean I had to be its puppet. Maybe I could control it. Maybe I could harness the darkness inside me. As I stepped out of the church and into the now silent streets of Millford, I knew one thing. This was far from over. Millford had claimed me, but I wasn't going to win.